All right, awesome. All right, so yeah, we just had in the chat, oh man, are we on the Gaunt Prospector? Oh, we covered it last week. This week we're going to be on page 131. We're in the family afterwards. And if you are as heartbroken, yes, oh, that is amazing. You got the exact page and exact paragraph. It's so awesome. So that's where we're at. Page 131, the paragraph that starts drinking isolates. Now, if you're as heartbroken as I know I would be to be missing out on the Gaunt Prospector, don't worry. The stuff that we're covering tonight is going to be incredible. This is where it talks about chocolate and candy and caffeine and nicotine. Ooh, so like stick around for the directions and the suggestions for all of those. Spoilers, there's also going to be very precise directions about regular inventory taking, but woo, candy and chocolate, let's go. All right, so again, for those that just joined us, we're on page 131, drinking isolates. We're in the chapter The Family Afterwards, and where we left off really was the theme of family cooperation. And in many ways, I mean, there's more than two, but like two themes that come to mind from where we left off to where we're picking up is family cooperation and demonstration. That's what I'm called to do, to demonstrate, and then with my family, cooperate with my family, working together on it, not just making one decision or another. So let's dive into this family afterward. It says drinking isolates most homes from the outside world. And you'll remember, for those who have been coming, we were talking about that, you know, in the chapter 2 Wives, that often when alcoholism, when this illness affects a whole family, that we want to, you know, isolate and stay apart from and not be active in the world because we're filled with that guilt and shame and remorse. I don't know about you, but for someone who is alcoholism, I also wanted to isolate, you know, and keep people away. And I didn't want to keep people too close. And that affects my whole family. It says, Father, doesn't matter, the alcoholic, the addict, whatever brings you to this study, may have laid aside for years all normal activities, clubs, civic duties, sports, yay, sports. I want you to know, when I was in the worst of it, I wasn't doing too many clubs, civic duties. You did not want me around your civic activities. And I wasn't too competent enough to be playing sports. And not because of my physical capability, but just because of how bad I was drinking, how bad I was using, right? And it says, when he renews interest in such things, a feeling of jealousy may arise. The family may feel they hold a mortgage on dad so big that no equity should be left for outsiders. Instead of developing new channels of activity for themselves, mother and father demand that he stay home and make up the deficiency. And that's a common problem. And that's what we're dealing with, is these common problems that the family may see or encounter after the spiritual experiences happen. You know, and that wanting attention. And do I not know what that's like? Me, as an alcoholic, as an addict, as an individual who has suffered from this illness, that trying to seek worth, validation, approval, that sense of security in others. And man, even when they gave it to me, it was not enough. And so I might come to the situation, be like, no, stay home, give me time, give me attention. But it's suggesting that whoever I am, if I'm reading this chapter and I'm wishing that other people would give me that time and attention, that I create those channels of activity, that I go out and create. You know, we're going to end the family afterwards with 3 little mottos, or 3 little sayings. And one of those sayings is live and let live. And so often I'm good at the let live. Okay, that's cool. You do you. But I forget to do me. I forget to live, you know, live and let live. Embrace this life that we have been given, the saved from a living death. And we're gonna, oh, welcome. Glad you're here. We're going to talk about that in a couple pages. And so it says at the very beginning, the couple ought to frankly face the fact that each will have to yield here and there cooperation if the family is going to play an effective part in the new life. father will necessarily spend much time with other alcoholics. Again, the reminder of one of the themes throughout this book. If I want sobriety, I've got to work with others. Working with others is not extra special top tier 12 step. Working with others is a minimum requirement. So I will need to spend much time working with others. Also, we got a definition in the chat. A deficiency is a failing, an inadequacy, a deficit, or a failure. Yeah, falling short, where I'm not living up how I think I ought to. And then it says, but this activity should be balanced. And this is the only time in the book we see that word balanced used in that connotation. You know, it talks about like, you know, the alcoholic being balanced in other respects, or like there's other places that uses the word, but in terms of finding, hey, you're welcome, in terms of finding balance, that's the only place. It's only mentioned one time in the book, and it's right here. And what am I balancing? I'm balancing my work, my 12-step work with others, and my family responsibilities, as well as, you know, being of use and service to the whole world. And so oftentimes when I would come to meetings and people would tell me, Paige, you got to find, and people still tell me I got to find balance. I'm not very balanced. Although I do make the joke, I'm like, listen, I have vertigo. It's hard. For those that know me, you guys know that I do have vertigo. But when it comes to finding balance, I don't know, is anyone here ever actually found balance? You know, anyone? Not seeing any hands go up, right? And when I was new and people would say, you got to find balance. I mean, that's not my experience. You know, I couldn't find balance, especially when I was new. When I was new, I mean, I was dying of this thing. There was like my head was on the chopping block and there was an axe over my head, and that axe was the first drink. And I didn't need to worry. I always make the joke, I didn't need to worry about windsurfing. I wasn't doing too much windsurfing when I was pissing my pants behind the dumpster. You know what I mean? At that point in my life, I didn't need to find balance. At that point in my life, what I needed was triage. Understanding the first step is that I would relapse. I would pick up again. I would drink again. And it was imminent. I got to treat that. If I've been given a terminal diagnosis, I've got to do everything, and with a slight glimmer of hope, I've got to do everything in my power to treat that. But now that I'm at that place where I'm recovered, it talks about balance. And for anyone that had just joined and maybe doesn't have the page, we're on page 131. It's what we're talking about is balance. And we're talking about balancing working with others and 12-step work, or working with others and family responsibilities. Now, I can't find that balance if I'm not fully engaged in all 12 steps. I can't. Because I can't work with others well, of course we can help others and be considerate of others, but man, I can't carry this message. I can't carry this message unless I've done this work and had this experience. So until I'm at that place, I don't need to worry about balance. I'm in the ICU. I got to treat this with everything that I got. But also, one of the reasons I kind of talk about balance, or at least rail against balance, whenever I think of the word balance, and those that know me are like, girl, you're not balanced. I can see why. But whenever I think about balance, I think if you think about like a waiter or a server at like a restaurant, right? And they're balancing all those plates. Who's at the center? Well, I'm at the center. And I don't know about you guys. I don't want to be at the center of my life. Man, when I have been at the center of my life, when I've been riddled with that selfishness and self-centeredness, that is when my life has been on fire. That is, and I don't mean on fire with the power of this program. I mean, it was a dumpster that was on fire. You know what I mean? The dumpster was ablaze and it was careening off a cliff. It was on fire when I was at the center of my life. So instead of finding balance or seeking balance, at least what I try to do and try to seek is God-centeredness. I want to be centered in the God of my understanding. Absolutely. centered in God. And in so doing, I find that balance takes care of itself. Welcome. I'll make you co-host. Woo! So glad you're here. All right. So it says new acquaintances who know nothing of alcoholism might be made, and thoughtful consideration given to their needs, thinking of others in all that I do. That sounds God-centered to me. How can I be of love and service in everything that I do? The problems of the community might engage attention. I might have, opinions about, how my community should go, or have a passion that is outside of 12-step. Wonderful, we can have those passions. But I wasn't good at having any other passion, anything other than, continuing to get loaded, continuing to get drunk until I had this solution. And it's as though the family has no religious connections. They may wish to make contact or with or take membership in a religious body. Bear with me with this. It's talking about, like, if this book went out when this book went out into the world, there might not have been an AA or a CA or a DAA or any other, 12. I might be a sole lone alcoholic in the middle of this world and only have a copy of this book. I might not know a single other recovered soul. And this book went out for me to identify, to relate, to see that I have this illness, to diagnose myself. It gave me clear-cut directions on how I can get well and how I can work with others. But I might want to connect with people who are on the spiritual path. I might want to connect with people who are also seeking a power greater than themselves. And if I was living in Canada in the 1940s, where would I go? Probably church, because, but nowadays there's so many places we can go and seek, and you don't have to. If you're like, man, I don't know about church, cool, you don't have to. But I just want to give the context of the suggestion. So it says, alcoholics who have derided religious people will be helped by such contacts. Yes, absolutely. So two things: derided. It means laughed at, ridiculed, held in contempt, mocked. That's the mocked is, yeah, I mocked, I judged. I was like, oh, I actually might be helped, by such contacts. And then also, yes, we can recover by this book alone. Though you be but one man with this book in your hand, right? We can accomplish. Oh man, we can accomplish so much. The power of the God of our own understanding works through us and the directions of this book. And yeah, man, we are so blessed to be literally all over the world and hanging out in this little Zoom room and talking about the power of this book and the power of the God of our own understanding. And it makes it so much easier. But yeah, if I was alone in the 1930s, 1940s and only had this book, I might want to seek from people who are a little further along the path. Just like it can be helpful in my spiritual journey to continue to grow and learn and be open to people who are a little bit farther along this spiritual path. And it says being possessed. So I have it, and it has me of a spiritual experience. That's the goal. That's the goal. Awesome. Absolutely. If you're looking for a sponsor, if you're looking for sponsees, I was supposed to put that in the announcement, so I always forget to do that. Feel free to put your numbers in chat and connect. Awesome. Heck yeah. Being possessed of a spiritual experience. The alcoholic will find he has much in common with these people. So where I used to show up with judgment and criticism, I can now see some of the commonalities. And it says, though he may differ with them on many matters, I don't need to agree, and I don't need to convince them to agree with me. I just love that humility. So it says, if he does not argue about religion, kind of prefacing it, he will make new friends and is sure to find new avenues of usefulness and pleasure. And of course, we came in, a lot of us wanting to argue and fight and theology, and this is why I don't believe in God and this and that. And if I can just lay aside those old ideas and have a new experience. And again, if church isn't where I'm called to be, that's cool, don't go. But there are so many different avenues in which we can grow. And of course, always rooted and grounded in this book and these steps and this way of life. But man, There's so much fun to be had in the spiritual way of life, so much fun and new experiences, and it's great. It says he and his family can be a bright spot in such congregations. He may bring new hope and new courage to many a priest, minister, or rabbi who gives his all to minister to our troubled world. Again, so what I'm saying, if you don't want to go, that's what the book's saying. We intend the foregoing, we intend what we've said already as a helpful suggestion only. So far as we are concerned, there's nothing obligatory about it. We're not saying you have to. We're just saying, hey, if you want to keep seeking, that's an option. So far as we are concerned, there's nothing obligatory about it. As non-denominational people, so we are not of any sort of particular faith, sect, denomination, nor do we oppose anyone. It says we cannot make others' minds for them. Each individual should consult his own conscience. Awesome. Oh, wait, hold on. There's a thing in chat I missed. So lack of power was my dilemma. The book is a treasure map to a treasure. Absolutely it is. And it's one of those things, like when I talk about like my barriers to belief in a power greater than myself, my barriers to belief in God, because that's kind of where the tangent that we're on, that's how we got here, right? I talk a lot about it like me being lost in the desert. You know, if you've ever been out in the desert, you got like the sand and the sun and the heat, and you know, imagine just being lost out there and there's no shade and the sun beating down for hours and hours, and we can tell like I got a sunburn by moonlight. You know what I mean? I'm not doing well out in the desert. You know, I am quite pale. Like I burn quite quickly. I would not be doing well, but I'm out in the desert and I'm lost. And you know, as hot as the desert gets during the day is as cold as it gets at night. And let's imagine that I've run out of food. I've run out of water. And that darkness is settling in. There's a chill in the air. And I know I'm not going to make it through that long night. I know I'm not going to survive. And by some miracle of miracle, I am given a map. And that map is this, exactly what we're talking about, this way out, this book, Alcoholics Anonymous, these 12 steps to have a spiritual awakening. In that moment, it's far more important that I pick up this book and follow the directions and get my butt out of the desert than it is figuring out how I got there in the first place. And those of you that know me know, be like, it'd be a real conundrum how she ended up in the desert, because those tires aren't going to do well. You know what I mean? Yeah. Black ink, white pages, blue book. Heck yeah. Absolutely. And so, yeah, those were the barriers. I had to let go of the why. And in so doing, the why was answered. And my whys was so I could help others. All of that to say, we have been speaking, and this is fun. This is where we get into just the joy and the enthusiasm. That's what we're talking about. So it says we've been speaking to you of loss. Yes, thank you. We have been speaking to you of serious, sometimes tragic things. We have been dealing with alcohol in its worst aspects, but we aren't a glum lot. Yes, glum. Glum. Saying glum by itself is such a weird word. That means gloomy. It's a gloomy group. It's cheerlessness. Yeah, glum lot. We are not. Oh, that rhymes. Exciting. I will not try to do this as like slam poetry and make it rhyme. Absolutely. We are not a glum lot. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. So, of course, as Bill Wilson says, our chief responsibility to the newcomers to present an adequate representation of the AA program. I'm paraphrasing. I'm absolutely paraphrasing, but it's that idea that my job is to present to somebody who is new this work, this way of life. But man, my responsibility to the newcomer is to demonstrate. And that's something we've been talking about this whole study. It's not about intellectualizing here. It's about demonstrating the joy in life, demonstrating the fun in our existence, demonstrating, the power of the God of our understanding that has worked in our lives. Man, you know, when you've gone to a meeting and there's like an old timer that's maybe a little bit dry. You know what I mean? You don't want to have a cigarette next to them because you're worried they're gonna go up like kindling. You know what I mean? And they're like just miserable, and it's like, yeah, so dryety. Exactly that. Like, and they're like, happy to be here, happy to be sober. And then we judge and we think somebody should tell your face. You know what I mean? And it's the people who are just about this thing. Yes, demonstrating God's omnipotence. We're going to see that coming up. That's our job, to demonstrate God's power and demonstrate the joy that really is available in this life. And because, man, if it was us hanging around in a bunch of Zoom squares or church basements or community centers talking about how hard it is now that we're sober and how sad it is we can't drink or use, or, man, who wants that? No, we have an incredible life, and there is a joy beyond anything that I could have ever imagined as a result of taking actions that I didn't like and didn't agree with and did not think they would help. Turns out they did. All right. So it says we absolutely insist on enjoying life. We insist, enjoy it, enjoy it. We try not, now this, I mean, it's a direction, but it's, try, we do our best, we're human. We try not to indulge in cynicism over the state of the nations. Oh, this world of ours today, nor do we carry the world's troubles on our shoulders. What we're doing, we're meant to be a part of life, not carry the burden of life, Welcome, glad you're here. We're on 132. Woo! And it says, when we see a man that is sinking into the mire that is alcoholism, imagine that quicksand, right, pulling us under. Also, weirdly enough, growing up, who else thought that quicksand would be like a greater hazard than it has been? You know what I mean? Like all the TV shows growing up, I was for sure thought we were going to have to watch out for quicksand. It has not been an actual, danger in my life thus far. But the quicksand of alcoholism definitely has been, that mire of alcoholism. And it says, when we see a man who is sinking into the mire that is alcoholism, we give him first aid and place what we have at his disposal. What do we have? Well, the spiritual awakening is the result of these steps. I have a solution, and I have a program of action, and I place that at their feet. And it says, for his sake, we recount and almost relive the horrors of the past. But those who have tried to shoulder the entire burden and trouble of others find we are soon overcome by them. There is a difference between carrying the mess, carrying the alcoholic, carrying the addict, and carrying the message. Oftentimes I'll work with people who would identify, like myself, as being perhaps a little codependent. And I'm sure no one else here could possibly ever relate to, that thing of trying to fix and save people. And I'm sure nobody has a bunch of capes in their closet that you want to put on and save the day. You know what I mean? I'm just me, and I was joking with my sponsor, where he was talking about, like, Paige, you don't need to be perfect. Sometimes we can just try to ask God, we can ask God to help us be a little bit better than we are. And I'm like, listen, Saint Paige, Our Lady of Perpetual Capes, doesn't like that idea. You know what I mean? And so, like, I want to show up and be perfect and save people. And man, I have tried to, like, fix all their problems, and I've tried to drag them to treatment centers and detoxes when they didn't want it. And you will be surprised, or not, that it didn't work at all. It not once ever worked. But what did work? Offering these steps and this way of life, because that's really all I have to offer. If you don't want it, that's so okay. If you want to try other things, that's also okay. I don't have anything else that worked for me, but if you want to go seek that and do it. But what I have is what's worked for me. And I don't need to try to fix you. I don't need to try to control you. I don't need to play God in your life or manage. I can just offer what has worked for me. And as a result, I don't get overcome by them. And that really is the difference between self-centered giving and God-centered giving in my experience. So what I mean by that is, man, sometimes I have days that are back to back to back with sponsees and service commitments and that sort of stuff. And you'd be amazed. I feel filled up by those. And then there's been times where in my life where I've had calls, somebody venting and complaining for like 40 minutes to 2 hours, and I feel drained. And see, if I'm feeling drained, that might be a sign that I'm trying to play God in their life and fix and manage and control, as opposed to laying down that which has worked for me. I'm just saying this is what I've done. I can be very codependent. And it says, so we think cheerfulness and laughter make for usefulness. And I love that, because that is what I'm called to be. Not God in their life, not the martyr, not the savior. I am called to be useful and helpful. And it says outsiders are sometimes shocked when we burst into merriment over a seemingly tragic experience out of the past. I mean, who here has not joked about being in the wet pants club and how great it is to have dry pants? You know what I mean? There was not a lot of nods. Don't tell me I was alone in the wet pants club. Well, I've joined you in the dry pants club. It's way better over here, you know? But like, we're able to laugh. And here's why we're able to laugh. It says, but why shouldn't we laugh? We have recovered. That, for those that are new, that does not mean cured. That means the obsession has been relieved. I am recovered. And I've been given to the power to help others. Recovered. That, I mean, that's why I can laugh, because I'm not there anymore. I am safe and in a position of neutrality, and I get to be a small part of the miracle of others. Man, that is incredible. And there is joy. Yes, I love the stuff coming in the chats. We're not cured. What we have is a daily reprieve. We are safe and we are protected. Yes, absolutely. And it says, everyone knows that those in bad health and those who seldom, that's rarely play, do not laugh much. So let each family play together or separately, as much as circumstances warrant. And this is a line so many of us know. We are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. We are sure. This is our experience. This is not what we read in a book. See, whenever it says we in this book, we're talking about the first 100. It was more 80. But also the we that is those of us who have gone through this book and followed these directions and had this experience. We too are sure from experience that God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. Man, I don't know about you, but that to me speaks of a loving God, you know, a loving God, and that's what's on offer. We cannot subscribe to the belief that this life is a vale of tears. And it's an old saying, a veil of tears, that like the troubles of the world, like it's the sorrow of existence, you know, though it was just that for many of us. Yes. Oh gosh, I have a friend. So in the chat, it doesn't matter what I want. I have a friend of mine who makes, I make stickers too, but I have a friend of mine who makes stickers and things like that, and buttons. And there's one that says, what I want doesn't matter, which is so accurate. But if you're new and you're like, wait, what? I promise you, we got something better than what I want. What I want, and you might hear this, what I want would have sold myself short. But when it says we cannot subscribe to the belief that this life is a veil of tears, though it was once just that for many of us. My life, when I got here, and there were times in my sobriety when I wasn't alive and on fire with this thing, that my life was a veil of tears. My life was agony and pain. And I want you to know that if that's your experience today, it does not take long to get well. And it says, but it is clear that we made our own misery. Rude of you to call me out like that. Rude. And we see that in the fourth step. And again, I don't know about you guys. I can take a beautiful, lovely Tuesday afternoon and just with my thinking, turn it into suicidal ideation. I'm sure no one else relates to that. And I will say it is one of those things. If you tell that to people that, you know, aren't like us, they're like, what? You know, that's that stuff that we can laugh about because we have freedom from. Now, one of the things that's in the chat is God gives me what I need, not what I want. And I love that. Yeah. And I try to convince them lots, you know. Yes, I have a disease of my mind and a sickness of my soul. Absolutely. I did not realize what was going on for me was that conscious separation of God. And I was stuck in self, like that was what was doing it. And so it says, avoid then. So this is the direction, avoid then the deliberate manufacture of misery. How do they know? You know what I mean? Like, how do they know I do that quite regularly? So avoid that. But if trouble comes, and I want to be very clear, trouble will come. And I say this a lot. Trouble will come, not because I'm in recovery, not because I'm recovered, not because I have the illness of alcoholism or the illness of addiction or whatever brings you here. Not because of that. Trouble will come because I'm a human being and I am not exempt from life. Life will happen, and a part of life can be pain and loss and sadness and ill health and tragedy. And that happens because it is life. And then it will happen. But if trouble comes, cheerfully, and I love that, cheerfully, capitalize it. It's an opportunity. So that's the attitude with which I show up to trouble, cheerfully. Capitalize it as an opportunity to demonstrate his omnipotence. Oh yeah, that was great timing. I was trying to say omnipotence slowly so that you would have, and I said it weird, omnipotence, because I was trying to say it slowly so you could pop the definition in. Omnipotence and welcome, glad you're here with us. We're on page 133. And so omnipotence, the definition is unlimited power, authority, and force. And I look at it as being all powerful, an opportunity to demonstrate God's power. And keep in mind, I am without power, and what I need is power. And I begin to demonstrate that power of God. In fact, then don't I ask for that in the third step prayer? Just in the chat, it says I attended a meeting in London, and I love that you said the UK in case we thought it was Ontario. Love it. In London, UK for years, that was closed every week with "We have been speaking to you," and then like that was closed with this paragraph, and thus became one of the favorite paragraphs in this book. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And says now about health. So now we're going to take a transition because sometimes we have health. I was joking about the vertigo, but for those that know, I do have health problems. And the reason, we have health problems, why? Because I have a body. You know what I mean? Human beings experience health problems. I'm not exempt from them. So it says now about health. A body badly burned by alcohol does not recover overnight. So it is one of those things where both things are true, where we have sudden, spectacular, powerful recoveries, and sometimes it can take a little bit to get our health back, and sometimes, to get the mental health back on track. Where it says, nor do twisted thinking and depression vanish in a twinkling. Both things are true. We are convinced that a spiritual mode of living, that means way of life. And so if you've been coming to the study for a while, that's one of the themes, way of life. This is not a set it and forget it program. This is a way in which I live my life. So this way of life is the most powerful health restorative. And it says, we who have, there's that word again, recovered from serious drinking are miracles of mental health. Now, earlier on in the book, we talk about in the forward to the second edition, a wholesale miracle has taken place. That's like going to Costco and getting a jumbo-sized package of miracles, right? We are miracles, and those miracles happen in Costco-sized quantities. I still have yet to find the UK equivalent of Costco, but I'll find it, and then I'll be really clever when I say it for you guys. And it says, but we have seen remarkable. Oh, Costco, good to know. We have seen remarkable transformations in our bodies. Hardly one of our crowd now shows any mark of dissipation. Yes, loss of health. Now, Rob's you got probably the official 1930s dictionary, right? I have the unofficial dictionary that is from the it's not the official one. So Rob's right, I'm wrong. But I got this old dictionary, this old medical dictionary, and man, again, whenever I think, oh, I'm really cool, I want to be like the cool kids. I'm not. I'm using like different dictionary, and I'm like, ooh, I'm a rebel, so we have a Marco here in Thailand. So if you're over in Thailand and if you're looking for a Costco, you might have to hit up a Marco, or go to the meetings and go carry this message, and you will see the Marco in your own life, the spiritual Marco. Anywho, the definition that I have, or that was discussed in this one, talks about excessive indulgence in drink specifically as well, which I thought that was really interesting. So what it's saying is hardly one of those of us who have recovered now shows any mark of the physical effects of alcohol. So what it's saying is you almost wouldn't be able to tell that we're alcoholics by looking at us and looking at our bodies and all that sort of stuff. And it says, but this does not mean we disregard human health measures. So this is the paragraph that's saying, if you need outside help, get outside help. If you have a mental health, if you have mental health issues or mental health struggles or physical health struggles, it is more than okay to seek outside help. It says God has abundantly supplied this fine world with doctors, psychologists, and practitioners of various kinds. Here's a direction. Do not hesitate to take your health problems to such persons. Most of them give freely of themselves, that their fellows may enjoy sound minds and bodies. Try to remember that though God has wrought miracles, at Costco or Marco, miracles among us, we should never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. And sometimes I'll joke with sponsees and like, if you love Dr. Phil, like that's totally cool. Like I'm making a joke. So I'm not actually, joking on, I'm just making a joke, but it's like, it says good doctors. I can say stuff about Dr. Phil. I'm just kidding. I love that. It's like, if I'm too pedantic, I can find some loopholes. It says I gotta don't belittle a good one. Doesn't say I can't belittle the ones that suck. Don't show up to the doctor's office. Now we've got all the Dr. Phil fans coming in. It was just a famous doctor that I know y'all know. I don't have an opinion on Dr. Phil. I'm quite Dr. Phil neutral. My dental hygienist, she watches a lot of Dr. Phil, so I get it when I'm getting my teeth cleaned. That is not helpful for anyone. That information will not keep you sober, but you got it anyway. Sorry, guys. And so it says we don't belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. So really, what is it saying? Showing up with humility, showing up with that idea, I might not have all the answers to all these things. And it says that their services are often indispensable. So just so vitally important in treating a newcomer and following in his case afterwards. Oftentimes, especially if we're withdrawing from things like alcohol, that can be quite dangerous, and we often need medical supervision. So, and here's where we get into it. We're rocking and rolling. Here's what you've all been waiting for, the candy section of the family afterward. Yes. It says one of the many doctors who had this opportunity of reading this book in manuscript form told us the use of sweets was often helpful. Oh, helpful. I couldn't find who that doctor was, but want to give that doctor an old thank you. That's a doctor I wouldn't belittle. I'm just joking. It says, of course, depending on doctor's advice. You notice how we'll stop right there and ignore the rest of the sentence, And it says he thought all alcoholic shots should constantly have chocolate available for its quick energy value at times of fatigue. He added that occasionally in the night, a vague craving arose, which would be satisfied by candy. Many of us have noticed a tendency to eat sweets and found that practice beneficial. So that's the, hey, we can have candy portion of the book. And I love that, because I'm like, man, if I can't sell you on the value of two wives, man, family afterwards gonna sell itself. Oh yeah, so one of the things in chat, I ate Swedish berries and junior mints my first 3 weeks of sobriety. Absolutely. And especially with alcohol, alcohol does have like a lot of sugar in it. And so oftentimes the body is sort of missing that sugar, and having something with sugar can sort of, I'm not a doctor, don't listen to me. Listen to the doctor that says have candy. I'm just kidding. Oh, yeah, and it says, but that is a suggestion for newbies. It doesn't say how long I can't have candy. I'm just kidding. I just like to joke around about that. It says for newcomers. It doesn't define how long that is. You can't be like 13 years in and still new. I'm keeping an open mind, I'm just kidding. All right. And so it says a word about sex relations. And so now we're kind of transitioning into, yeah, well, I guess sex relations. And it says alcohol is so sexually stimulating to some men that they have overindulged. And so one of the things with this part of the book is it is really helpful. And so oftentimes, alcohol can have an effect on us, and oftentimes my sex conduct quite regularly involved alcohol or other substances. You know what I mean? And for those that are coming here, maybe alcohol wasn't, what you use things like stimulants. Stimulants can be really, they can have a really, they can affect the libido, is what I'm trying to find a polite way of saying things. What I'm trying to say is oftentimes these substances can affect us sexually. And then when we come off them, there's a decrease in the libido. And that's what stimulants can be stimulating, right? And often alcoholics, we have a stimulating effect with alcohol. Surprise, yeah. And it says couples are occasionally dismayed to find that when drinking is stopped, the man tends to be impotent. Unless the reason is understood, there may be an emotional upset. And when we're talking about sex and sex relations, oftentimes what we're striking at is, a lot of intimacy. Now, sex and intimacy can be different. It took me some inventory to learn that. But when somebody seems to not be interested in, let's say me, if somebody's not interested in me in the way that they used to be, especially, now that they're sober, I might immediately get sensitive, self-centered, and think the problem is me. And how often have we not fallen into that? What's wrong with me? Do you not love me anymore? Do you not find me attractive? Those fears. And so it's saying, unless the reason is understood, there may be emotional upset. To understand that this is a common thing that happens. And also many of us, not all of us, but many of us come into the rooms with just a lot of sex conduct, a lot of sex that we got to inventory, like sex relations and stuff. And sometimes we feel a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, and we very much kind of avoid sex or sex relations kind of in general. And that can be common as well. Often as well, something that I found is so many of us, when we talk about sex, very much it can be a form of intimacy, and that's vulnerability. And maybe I haven't done that often sober. And so that's a new thing and scary. So these are just some barriers that we might have to physical intimacy that often happens when we get sober. And what's the theme of this, what's the theme of this paragraph? That communication, that cooperation, that understanding about this sensitive and difficult issue. And it says, some of us have had this experience only to enjoy in a few months, a finer intimacy than ever. There should be no hesitancy in consulting a doctor or psychologist if the condition persists. We do not know of many cases where this difficulty has lasted long. And now talking about the whole family, the children and all together. It says, the alcoholic may find it hard to re-establish friendly relations with, yes, it does not take long. And actually, we're going to see how quickly in the early days, I might go over time, so bear with me, guys. But we're going to see how quickly people recovered. So the alcoholic may find it hard to reestablish friendly relations with his children. Their young minds were impressionable while he was drinking. Without saying so, they may cordially hate him for what he has done to them and their mother. The children are sometimes dominated by a pathetic hardness and cynicism. Now, that word pathetic, I would read that and I'd be like, oh, that seems like a little harsh. Like, these are children and they've been like pretty badly traumatized. I could understand why they're still holding on to anger, bitterness, and resentment. And I know a lot of people who have been deeply affected growing up in alcoholic homes or having addiction in their family. And so what did I do? I turned to my old-timey dictionary and I had a look at pathetic as it was used in the 1930s. Are you trying to get it in the chat, Rob? I can go slower if you are. Yes, those warped lives of blameless children, absolutely. But the definition I found for pathetic is affecting emotions or passions. So pathetic, yeah, what we might think is pathetic is pitiful, sad, or distressing, or oh, you're weak, why can't you forgive? But the definition I found in this dictionary, which is the wrong dictionary, it's not the right one, I'm wrong, you're right, was that it was affecting emotions. So this emotional hardness and cynicism. And when I read that, that made a lot of sense to me. Yeah, or arousing or deserving pity. That's a beautiful way to look at it too, with the modern, not modern, because you got it from the 1930s, but another way to look at it. Absolutely. And it says they cannot seem to forgive and forget. And it of course, they may hang on for months, long after their mother has accepted dad's new way of living and thinking. And this is a new way of living, a new way of life. That's what we're after. It says in time, they will see that he is a new man and they will let him know it. So in time, so oftentimes with those closest to us, it takes time, but also what we have read, that it also takes a consistent demonstration. So not just time away from the bottle, but that consistent demonstration. They will see that. And when they see it, they will let him know that they see it. When this happens, he can be invited to join in morning meditation, which kind of tells us that that morning meditation practice is not optional. Yes, bear witness. They're going to bear witness, as it speaks of in step 3, as you were saying. Yes. So it's talking, when this happens, they can be invited to join in morning meditation. There is a daily morning meditation practice. That's not even, it's of course there is, you know what I mean? That's what, yes, absolutely. Our behavior must convince them more than our words. We're here to demonstrate. And part of that demonstration is that I have that morning meditation practice. And that was something that the whole family partook in. Now we spoke earlier about like, hey, don't try to force your family to do it with you, but demonstrate. And it says, and so they can be invited to join in morning meditation, which is not optional. And it says and then they can take part in the daily discussion. Another interesting thing about how the families operated is that there was a daily discussion. There were these regular discussions, touching base, communicating. And I need to do that if I'm going to cooperate, communication, which it's so simple, but such a mind-blowing idea. You know what I mean? I've suggested that to sponsees. I'm like, could you just maybe communicate that? They're like, what a radical idea. Like it was radical when I heard that, And it says they can take part in the daily discussion without rancor or bias. And rancor, sorry, I was waiting for the definition, but it's okay. It means anger or that deep spite. You're doing great. I don't want to step on your toes in the thing. So it says from that point on, progress will be rapid. So from that point, there's going to be growth, and it's going to be quick growth. Marvelous results often follow such a reunion. And it says whether the family goes on a spiritual basis of life, way of life or not, the alcoholic member has to, if he would recover. Oh, yeah. That's okay. Give me a second. I'm going to finish this paragraph and then I'm going to read what you put. It says the others must be convinced of his new status beyond a shadow of a doubt. Seeing is believing to most families who have lived with the drinker. That is what I'm called to do, to demonstrate. And we just have in the chat 8 more changes to face within the family afterward, right? So there's the struggles, who wears the pants, right? And we spoke about that last week. And it's not the man's the man. No, it's you guys have a discussion and talk about it and see. And it's really about that equality in the relationship and that communication in the relationship. 2, dad's new outside interests and his resulting absences. 3, the need to balance the alcoholic and non-alcoholic friends. 4, the possibility of becoming church members. 5, the insistence on laughter and enjoying life. 6, the recovery of bodily health. 7, the possibility of sexual impotence. 8, finally, the need for dad to reclaim his children's love and respect. Beautiful, absolutely. And just what I would say too is it talks about the warnings at the very beginning of going too hard into focusing on business, going off on a spiritual tangent, but a spiritual tangent is always preferred. And so now we're going to get into a story. And it says, here's a case in point. So this case in point is, his name is Earl Treat, E-A-R-L, Treat, T-R-E-A-T, like the chocolate treat that it said that I could have on 134. His story is, he sold himself short. Now, once we finish this, and you can make a note in your book to see page 264. So we're gonna read this story, and then we're gonna pop over to his story. But if you're writing in your book, you can make a note 264. So here's a case in point. One of our friends, Earl, was a heavy smoker and coffee drinker. There was no doubt he overindulged. Seeing this and meaning to be helpful, his wife commenced to admonish him about it. She was nagging, she was picking fights, she was critical. He admitted he was overdoing these things, but frankly said he was not ready to stop. So he's got some honest communication. I'm not ready to give up the coffee and the nicotine. Heck, probably not all at once, you know. That would make for a cranky morning, you know. Oh, and it's one of those things. I'm so glad that God came and separated me from nicotine. So it was a beautiful process. And it reminds me always never to doubt the power of God working in my life. And a couple months ago, my stomach stopped handling coffee. And again, if it wasn't for God, we would be having a real hard time. And you know, one of those things like, thank goodness I remembered tea existed. You know what I mean? Yeah, we're gonna see what happens. All right. So he admitted he was overdoing these things, but frankly said he was not ready to stop. His wife is one of those persons who feels there's something rather sinful about these commodities. So she nagged. And I've never nagged my way into permanent long-term success with anything. Yes, and we're seeing how resentment is the #1 offender. You guys are already picking up what's happening and where we go on 264, but we'll pop over to 262 first. And her intolerance finally threw him into a fit of anger. He picked up a resentment. Boom, he got drunk. Of course, our friend was wrong, dead wrong. He had to painfully admit this and mend his spiritual fences, make those amends. Though he is now a most effective member of Alcoholics Anonymous, he still smokes and drinks coffee. But neither his wife nor anyone else stands in judgment. Thank goodness, because what will we do at meetings? I'm just kidding. You know, the coffee and the, you know, how do you find the meeting? You find the, you know, plume of smoke outside the church basement. You know, that's how we find the entranceway. But neither his wife nor anyone else stands in judgment. See, she sees that she was wrong to make a burning issue of such a matter when his more serious ailments were being rapidly cured. We have 3 little mottos which are apropos. Here they are. First things first. First things being God, putting God first in everything that we do. That's what that line is referencing. That quote came from the Oxford group, and it came from like a biblical reference, like put God first. And says, live and let live. And we spoke about that. I am called to live, enjoy life, and let other people do the same. I'm not going to put God in their life, and easy does it. And Al-Anon loves the slogans. Now, if you'll indulge me, we'll go over just a few minutes. Let's pop over to the very bottom of page 262, if you don't mind. Page 262, the very, very bottom paragraph. Because I love, because the message for the family is pick your battles. The message for the family is like, hey, like, it's okay that he's having nicotine and caffeine. Like, it's not the end of the world. Pick your battles. But there is a message for us, and we're going to see that. We're going to see that on page 264, but let's go see 262 because there's some cool stuff here. So it says, the day before I was due to go back to Chicago, it was Dr. Bob's afternoon off. So Earl Treat, he was from Chicago. He goes out to Akron, Ohio, and he works with Dr. Bob. Now, he'd already been connected with Dr. Bob and some of the stuff they were doing, so he already knew. But I love to tell this as a joke. And like the Dr. Phil thing, it is a joke. I'm going to have to make amends to Dr. Phil. But if you don't know what Dr. Bob did for a living, Dr. Bob was a colorectal surgeon. He was a proctologist. So imagine you hadn't got connected with, the AA groups and the AA people, and you hear there's a solution for alcoholism. And you show up and it says, Dr. Bob Smith, colorectal surgeon. And you think the solution is invasive anal surgery. And he goes in, he does it. He's willing to go, So all I'm saying is that fourth step doesn't seem too bad now, right? Got some willingness to make those amends, right? And it says he had me to the office and we spent 3 or 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours, not years, not months, I usually 3 or 4 weeks, maybe a month or 2, not even 3 or 4 days, 3 or 4 hours, formally going through the 6-step program as it was at that time. They adapted the oh gosh, we got some stuff. It says in the chat, it says, Dr. Bob, you worked with bums, drunk bums, and then freely helping alcoholics 2 fingers at a time. I just repeated the joke. It's not, man, there are some people that are going to have to write a lot of page specific inventory tonight, and which I will say, you're welcome. It'll lead you closer to God. Oh, I'm so sorry. All right. So these steps were complete deflation. That complete deflation is of my ego, of myself, right? Coming to the end of myself. It says number 2, dependence and guidance. So that sounds like a step 1. Dependence and guidance from a higher power. That sounds like a 2 and a 3. And number 3, moral inventory sounds like a 4th step to me. Confession sounds like a 5th step. Restitution, that's amends, that's making it right. And then continued work with others. Step 12. Yeah. Oh gosh, is it a bunch of proctologist jokes in the chat? Yeah. Oh no, it's not. Yeah, the magic, that's where the magic happens. And we were reborn. And that means something had to die. For me to be reborn, something has to die. And what has to die? The ego. Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's pop over page 264 and go to the very, very bottom paragraph of page 264. I'm just going to skip the, some of the actions he did and all of that. Let's get right to the point, which is not something I'm good at. Tangents and roundabouts, and here we are. So very bottom paragraph of 264, you can make a little note in your book to see page 135. That's where we jumped from. It says, a few months after I made my original trip to Akron, I was feeling pretty cocky. I didn't think my wife was treating me with proper respect now that I was an outstanding citizen. It's nagging me about the coffee and the cigarettes. So I set out to get drunk deliberately just to teach her what she was missing. A week later, I had to get an old friend from Akron to spend 2 days sobering me up. That was my lesson. So the lesson for the family is, pick your battles. But the lesson for us is this, that one could not take the moral inventory and then file it away. That the alcoholic has to continue to take inventory every day if he expects to get well and stay well. And that's the lesson for us. And thank you guys so much for coming. It's truly a pleasure, and thank you for sticking around as we went a little over. And so I'll stop the recording and we can say the prayer.